Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. I don't think I have to say who I am anymore after the morning plenary. I'm from the evil empire. But apart from that, I'm also the chair of the TERENA task force on mobility and network middleware. And we wanted to have a session in which we would, on the one hand, share all the great things that are happening in the middleware task forces of TERENA, most notably mobility and network middleware and EMC squared. That looks more at the federation space. Jacob will tell more about that. But we wanted to share that with you, even though many of the things that have been developed in the task forces have also found their way into the main conference in the past year and also in this year. But the reason that we want to point this out call this out a little bit more is because we also can always do with new blood and new ideas. So consider this also as a kind of a call to arms to participate in the task forces in TERENA and make sure that they continue to be successful. We have a pretty packed program, so I will not take much longer, but instead hand over to another person that moved over to the evil commercial world, but before that has been for many, many years chair of the TF-EMC2, or as it was called before, T-Phase, and he's going to share some thoughts about what it means to be involved in task forces in TERENA and how that plays in the political game that also the NREN community is. Jacob.
Thank you, class. Can you hear me? Is this working? No? Yes. Now. Okay. So, well, originally I was going to call this talk precisely why have we been so successful? But I thought it was a little bit going a little bit far. But the fact is that we have been very successful. And my impression, well, as a class said, I am one of the older old-timers here, not in age, because I'm still young, not like many of you, but I have been around for almost more than 10 years. And I'm very happy to say that we have been working for more than 10 years, and we are still counting, and we hope that we will be counting in the coming years as well. Basically, something that I'm really happy is about that middleware is now one essential part of TERENA activities and the activities of NRENs across Europe and even beyond. And I remember when we started, this is about the question about people looking into like middleware. Now, recently, I had a meeting with with the management in TERENA, complaining about the TNC becoming the TMC. That was something that is a good sign of times that something we have done well. Essentially, and apart from that, apart from anything else, finding funny names for the task forces. If you look at, we have, first of all, we have LSD. We then have T-Phase. Now we have EMC squared, M&M. So we have been running task forces related to middleware technologies for more than 10 years, as I told before, and we have achieved not only the free exchange of information, and we have not only built a community, but we have achieved as well a couple of very important kind of different services, not a couple of products, because we have several services as a result. We have TCS, we have eduroam itself, we have TACAR and several others, and which could be even more important, global collaboration. Well, basically, apart from the fact that the community is built of extremely smart people, apart that we all make a lot of fun out of it, apart that we work much beyond what we have been paid for, etc., There are a few things that are related to how the community has been organized and how we have been shaping our goals that have had strong influence on how this have been so successful. First of all is to keep what middleware is, or what middleware, or this fuzzy definition of middleware that make it so cool on the one side, and then apply a few basic principles that, well, sounds very well, but when it comes to reality, from time to time, it's difficult to apply, and I think we have been successful in finding our way, applying them, that you have talk to anybody, let things happen, keep things extremely simple, not complicate yourself with anything, and, well, the most difficult of all, which was about maintaining focus. Well, middleware is cool. You are here because middleware is cool, and we are here because middleware is cool. Middleware is, when you look at it, is the base for any network service. Wherever, at the beginning, I remember that it was difficult to explain what you were going to do, was that you were going to provide a layer able to enable services based on the network infrastructure. Right now, almost everybody is referring to this is done by the middleware, this is done by the middleware, several layers. And what is important in an environment like ours, which is very much budget restricted, is about this way of providing good innovation at a very reasonable cost. Because first, it's software intensive, it's something that you can do by writing software, configuring software, deploying software. It has not much to do with really expensive boxes full of very expensive lights. And open source implementations are commonplace as well. We're not talking about finance, we're not talking about payrolls, we're not talking about the things that are not that complicated, but certainly very, very, very extremely expensive. And well, middleware by definition is the base for any kind of collaboration. You can run scientific or even direct personal collaboration at any level. Other thing that has helped in the success of the middleware effort inside TERENA is that we were lucky enough to have a fuzzy definition of middleware. Middleware is something that, well, can happen at almost any level and can be used by almost any application. Any application needs to run on top of network at least one of access control, location services, accounting mechanism, ways of exchange messages with the other applications. So it's not that difficult to find. It's like if you have a hammer, it's not that difficult to find the nails. Or if you have the nails, well, it sounds like a reasonably useful hammer to nail down the nails. And enable something that has become commonplace, a common requirement for users and in general for the communities and for the user communities. It's about the seamless integration. As the network has been evolving, as the new services appear, one of the basic demands from the user community has been precisely about seamless integration. I don't want to be concerned on how I should do that. I should publish my information. I should access my network, or I should exchange some data with some remote colleagues in a project. So it's about, we started, and we still are much more concentrated on the plug and play. You connect at your own. The archetypal case is eduroam, but we are starting to think much more on the plug and play. Simplify the way in which you can enable even your tiny things, your applications, your data, something that you are not very computer savvy, but you want to make it available, and middleware simplifies that. Well, we have tried to adapt and extend. We have tried to keep as much as we have been able to attention to user needs, and something very important, to keep a community diversity. It's not only, we have been successful as well in not being concentrated only in the needs of, let's say, the users on the long tail, for example, of the high energy physics, or a few minority communities that are very demanding, but on the other hand, well, have a very somehow narrow scope in the requirements. We have tried to listen and talk to anybody. You say that and you say, well, that's something that everyone does. Not exactly. It has been difficult. It is difficult when you have a group of people that have achieved certain results, a group of people that are very, very glad to know each other, and they are close people, even good friends. It's difficult to go out, try to invite now, try to bring intruders that will criticize what you're doing and will complain about that. But we have been doing active outreach, and we have been actively looking for allies at all levels. There are a few of you who are from America over there, in that row, basically. Normally we have people from Asia as well. We have traditionally have people from Australia as well. We are looking for people globally, and we are glad to have achieved this. And we have really hardly tried to go down in the global scale and go to the local environment. And in fact, my successors as chairman of the TF-EMC2 are precisely from the campus level. And that's good in the sense that we are involving our user organizations. And we have tried to rely extremely on meritocracy. Whenever somebody came here, we have never, well, my impression is that we have always let people have their say, not, even have a longer say, a very long say. Remember this long meeting, sending at 7:30 when it was supposed to end at 5, etc. Because everybody has the opportunity to have their say and to criticize and be criticized, of course. We have tried to not be aware of starting small, and wait to gain critical mass step by step. That remembers with Takar, for example. But on the other hand, to think big. In the moment you have something, and this has been a tradition, and I think it's very important, is in the moment you have something that could be of any use, you come and present, you come and share, you come and tell people, hey, I have this. Many cases, people are going to say, ah, yes, interesting. In other cases, people say, aha, interesting. And in other cases, they say, come on, let's do that. So, and well, we have been changing as we grow. We have trying different models from doing everything on ourselves, and we have even make deal with providers, the able commercial providers that some of us represent here. And we are trying new models. We have been not, we are not being shy in that. In blazing our trails, we have made, and well, I must say that even in procurement, we have innovated a lot. The model, like the TCS model, is something that now is all around as an example of how you can collaborate with the commercial sector and make them gain and gain on your own. Keep it simple, try to avoid from the beginning the typical technical and administrative overhead. Avoid the excess of architecture or architectural documents, specifications, risk analysis, etc. Keep things simple, make them happen, make them show by example. And when you have to formalize, for sure you have to formalize, take careful steps. And we have been lucky enough to have people with, I would say, legal and formal minds in the community. That's part of the diversity. We are not only techies. From time to time there was some kind with a lawyer mind. It's not there, our main lawyer-minded guy, right? No. And but that has helped us in going step by step. And for sure, take advantage of the trust link. We know each other. We trust each other. We trust the environment. We know which our goals are, and we have taken advantage of this. And well, make the whole system sustainable. And what is very important is something that before I left Reddit, I started to hear was something really, really, really concerning to me. So it's about we had to grow. We have to grow our services. We have to grow our user base. We have to grow everything. First of all, sustainability, even in the world, is completely against the principle of continuous growth. That's true for the world, and that's true for any kind of infrastructure, and for sure that's true for the research networks. Maintain focus. Just that. Yes, exactly. Maintain focus. The idea is that it's difficult. It's difficult. Middleware is fuzzy. Middleware is one of the reasons of the success is that middleware is fuzzy, but you have to be concentrated on the real stuff. Find your current achievement, try to widen the application area, and explore demanding aspect. I do think that this is the place in which probably the leg that was been failing a little bit because, well, it's part of normal human behavior. But, well, I hope we will have another bunch of years to provide innovative services. And well, this is something that I have repeated many times, so I will go through it fast as well. It's about follow the 3 Spanish Bs, which is bueno for good, bonito for nice, barato for cheap. Let's continue making it bueno, bonito, and barato. And that's all. Thank you. On time, right?
Thank you, Diego. It was even almost on time. We have time for one question, if there is any. Well, just give it and you can always take this one. No question? Good, that saves us a bit of time again. Now we move on to a sort of little block with patting our own backs and success stories. And to start with Miroslav Milinovic of the University Computing Center in Zagreb, representing CARNET also today. And Miro will talk as the leader of the eduroam operational team and hopefully tell a bit why this originated in the task forces of TERENA and how this could grow through the participation of many people. Miro.
Thank you, Klaas. Klaas has said everything, although I would love to be announced as the European eduroam service leader. That's the, so to say, official. I kind of decided to take a relatively hard job. So I'm standing in front of you as historian, and I was not trained as one. So I do know, and because I received some emails that some people are watching what I'm going to say about the history of eduroam over the network. And so please be gentle to me because the historians make a big mistake, so I also reserve the right to make mistakes and apologize to those whom I'm going to miss in my historical overview, or at least this is mine. And by the way, who's not using eduroam in this room? Come on, guys, admit. According to the statistics I have checked, thank you very much for that, and for admitting. I've checked the statistics. It looks like our maximum at this conference currently is 450 plus clients connected at some point of time. So not so bad, having in mind that I'm bearing 2 of those. What I want to address is the eduroam that started as an idea and ended up as a product, maybe product, not industrial one, close to that. So it's a journey. And it all started with this email from somebody who we know, has been sent to the mobility list, task force mobility list on Thursday, May 30. So we are close to celebrate the 10 years of eduroam Nice Balloons. So this was a proposal to start something, to see if there would be a use case for the internet, for the inter-NREN wireless roaming test at that moment. So that was 10 years ago, almost. As the engineers would do, then suddenly somebody decided, or task force decided, to do the roaming requirements. I'm putting the inter-NREN in the gray here intentionally because some statistics I will show at the end will show you that actually eduroam is greatest inside the NRN, no as the international tool. Stay for that. So these are the basic roaming requirements that were laid down at that time. Identify users uniquely at the edge of the network. Let's make it secure and privacy preserving. enable guest usage, and by the way, do it scalable, do it in the way that the local service provider would not have to register new users, and then the administration and authentication would be on the side of the IDP. That would normally gain the possibility that his own users will be able to use the same network, have a same look and feel of the network wherever they go. Easy to install and use, and we are still fighting with this because we do have one-time installation hurdle in front of the user. And it had to be open, and the openness here stands for don't be vendor specific, not open all your ports, although open all your ports at the eduroam hotspot is something that we strive to, but we do have a minimum that has to be listed. And as the engineers, you see the URL at the end, you will find the initial specification from that time. And of course, you never have one solution, so people came up with solutions for the roaming. And the first one was the web-based. I've stole the picture from that time, from the Finnish colleagues. So you know that, this is how web portal thing is. That was not perceived as the securest way of doing things. There was another one based on VPN, and that one was perceived as not so scalable as one would expect. And at that time, that was 10 years ago, it was also perceived as not so cheap, affordable, so to say. And then comes this solution, and this picture has been shown on these conferences since 2002 so many times, so I'm by no means going to comment on it. That's becoming an eduroam classic, and sometimes people say, do we have an eduroam session at this conference? And I say, no, please, we are using eduroam. It's not anymore a matter of discussion, it's a matter of using a service. Okay, it's a little bit of overdoing, but this is it. And that was selected as a solution. As the good engineers, they decided, another slide that I borrowed, this time from class, they decided to do a pilot. Without a pilot, you don't know if this will fly or not. So you see that is February 2004. So you see the initial radius proxy hierarchy in Europe. There were some countries that decided to put an effort into it and allow their wireless users to visit others and also accept visitors from other countries. At that time, actually, we also allowed the dial-up users to use the Carnet dial-up infrastructure in Croatia. If you could roam also in the dial-up, that is interesting stuff. But that was the beginning, 2004. And then, of course, there comes the jaunt to the perspective. A good pilot had a possibility to become a decent service. So it has been taken by the jaunt 2 project as an input from the academic community. First, researched again, so the whole process of writing down the requirements, defining the architecture, finishing it and saying that this works, has been taken by the GRA, that is Joint Research Activity, started in 2004, ended up with the establishment of the service activity, nice shortcuts, in 2007, and writing down the first ever European eduroam policy that was ended after a year of struggle, so to say, in January 2008. I don't think that this should be recorded when I said struggle. By definition, when you say a service, you have to think about the users. And then it means that you don't think only about the technology you have seen on the slide, on the famous slide. You also think about how you will support them. So we initially started to think about the supporting services like that would disseminate information, that would kind of help users to set up their equipment and to learn where they can use the service. And it ended up with the European eduroam Confederation that was officially started on September 1st, 2008. And with the eduroam website that we still have today. 4 years after, it looks almost the same. It means that we have to tidy it up a bit. From the jaunt time, there is the one slide I borrowed from the presentations done for the jaunt. And here is actually the most important thing here is the motto. that we still feel is appropriate. Open your laptop and be online. Of course, pull out your smartphone, be online. I do sincerely hope that one of these days eduroam will reach that point. For some of us, for some of you, it actually did. But on the other hand, you might wonder that there are users with a problem, so we still have a way to go. People would say, you say that you are managing the service. Are you able to measure it? And the answer is somehow yes. Here are some pictures that show that some years ago we had a lot of experiments with the eduroam, even the eduroam in the buses on some of the previous conferences, and I presume there are some other eduroam enabled buses or vehicles wherever it is possible. But here are the numbers. We now have the Global Eduroam Governance Committee that had face-to-face meeting just before this session. We have something like 50 plus countries that have signed a version of a policy, where European Confederation has 43, but there are Australia, Canada, Japan, and USA in the alphabetical order here. Also, plus some Asian and Pacific countries, Latin America and Africa. So you would say this is really a global service these days. Numbers. We counted 5,000 plus service locations in Europe. When I say service location, this building is one. We've done a successful service for acquiring the statistics, and from 20 plus European countries in last year, we got $250 million or 250 million, whatever you would like to, successful authentications. That's a number. That shows that people are at least trying to connect to the net. Remember the first slide, inter-NREN roaming. Only 6% of this $250 million in Europe, $250 million in Europe, is actually international. The rest is national. So eduroam has been adopted to become a national roaming service. Don't forget about it. A lot of institutions nowadays use eduroam as the only SSID they have, the only wireless they have, and they are happy. These figures show that out clearly. Statistics from the top-level servers actually says that we have over 3 million of successful authentications in March, and something like 40,000 user days. I'm not going to explain in details how we got to that number, but 40,000 user devices. That would mean that me and my computer today are counted as one, regardless of how many authentications we have successfully done today because I was off and on the network. So 40,000 user days in March. So this service is really being used. It has moved from an idea, from an engineering idea, and let's try to do it in the task force, to something that is respected as a service, used as a service, and has a potential to become a product of industrial quality, I hope. And by the way, if you have heard about the Wiggle service, it ranked eduroam SSID as 27th most widely used SSID. On the higher in the list are the ones like public, Wi-Fi free, default, Linksys, and the others. So I feel quite proud about this ranking. And yes, I'm at the end of this presentation, while with the eduroam we've just started well. We still have to do a lot in the deployment and development. When it comes to the deployment, I was proud to say 50 plus countries. Okay, United Nations have a little bit more. Internet covers the whole global Earth. So what I would love to say is, okay, eduroam is wherever you go. It's not even the item for the TNC because it's accepted as the internet itself. We do have not only the new members, but the increasing coverage inside the countries. You would always find a new campus, the new library, the new public place where the eduroam would be a good idea. Don't stop, continue. And of course the development. Either the core technologies, naming just the radius over TLS and RADSEC and dynamic discovery, new app types. We can't stop the industry, of course. And also these supporting services, things like you have heard on this conference, the configurator tool, or CAT, that probably is moving more to the, not to small pet, rather to Chimera, to some very, very powerful beast. And then the eduroam companion, diagnostics, and a lot of other stuff. So that is the eduroam, just at the beginning, after 10 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Miro. Is there a question for Miro? I thank you, Miro. I think you are a better historian than you give yourself credit for. I even noticed that you falsified history by fixing a mistake I made on the Croatian part of the slide he copied from me. So you're doing well. Our next speaker, if she manages to put the microphone in her hair, is Licia Florio of TERENA, Project Development Officer, and together with a high number of people, I should say, from the TERENA task forces, she was at the basis of a number of very successful developments that have less to do with just pure technology, but much more with, I would say, bundling forces and doing things together that are better done together than alone. And she will share some of those examples with us. Licia?
Okay. So apparently the microphone was conceived for men with not a lot of hair. It seems to be some issues. So as Klaas said, I would like just to say what we have achieved in the middleware task forces, but this doesn't mean that other task forces have achieved less. They just do not qualify as middleware. So this is me. I've been around for 10 years working for TERENA. I wouldn't have thought I would have stayed for so long in the Netherlands, but I managed. I've been involved in several middleware activities, and when I started, middleware was a bit of an esoteric activity in TERENA. It was all about the network and IPv6 and performances and security, and then there was these people doing middleware. So I started as TFAs, then became EMC2. We got smarter with names, mobility, MNM, not quite sure there, involved in inter-NREN and refeds. I'm not going very much into this here. So just to be clear, as Diego said, middleware is everything. So some people may be inclined to think that DNS is middleware, which probably is at some level. But what is that we look at precisely here? Those are the applications, that is the network. And there is this something in between that allows us to do web single sign-on and network single sign-on, as Miro has nicely reported about. So in 10 years of middleware, when we were putting together this session, I thought, oh, really? What have we been doing so far? There was drinking, partying, arguing. Yeah, sure. But I realized that actually we have done quite a bit, and maybe I thought we should brag a little bit more about this. So the order is not really chronological. So the TCS started as the TERENA certificate service, the server certificate service. It became the TERENA certificate service or services, as there are multiple products under that. And it enables the provision of digital certificate at a flat fee rates. This also started as a good idea of two people who don't bother to be here, of course, because they are too busy right now, Guido Aben and Jan Meyer. But of course, to get TCS at the stage where it is, it involved many other people, like Milan Sova, who is here, Kent Engström, if I pronounce that well, Theo Nyssen, and a few others that are not here, but have been really involved and made TCS really good. Eduroam. I think I can skip. Everybody knows about eduroam by now. So, but also here, it started with an idea of one person, other people got in, and there was a lot of work for many individuals. Shack, maybe Shack is a less well-known product, mostly because it's used by the university. It's probably a very geeky product, you don't see a lot about that. But it's just a schema to support interinstitutional data exchange. This also came from an idea of Diego Lopez, the one who moved to the evil side as well, and then Victoriano Giral worked on that, Maja Volnievich worked on that, and a few other people that I cannot name all here. Takar, again, Jan Meyer was quite involved into this, and then Milan Sova. You know, there are some overlap in this, but there has been a lot of work. And although, as you can see, the products are quite different. Takar is very much oriented for a small niche of people, those dealing with digital certificates. Thanks God, not everybody. TCS is a little bit wider because it addresses a different type of market. And then there have been things like REFETs that also were originated and initiated within the task forces, but then they became too big to be contained and they had to be moved out. And since recently, the TERENA Trust Cloud Drive, I'm not sure the name, maybe I should call it TCD. And this is actually a kind of a joint effort between the middleware activities. We were talking a lot about clouds from a different point of view, and the storage people, they were looking at storage, equipment, etc. But we have something that has some potentials. So let's hope. So what all these things have in common, after all? They are different things, but there is one thing in common. They all originated by some ideas of people. Those people got together and they started discussing that, good ideas, bad ideas, some other people joined that. There were lots of ideas that were proposed. Not all ideas got embraced by the members of the task forces, but some of the ideas just evolved and became projects, services, or tools, facilities, depending how you want to call them. The most important thing is that those are all examples of collaborative efforts, and this is, in my opinion, one of the strengths of this community, and they were supported by TERENA. The success of these things is not per se the success of TERENA, but the success of our community being together and doing things together. So how do we build communities? Because this seems to be something quite simple. You get people together, you chat, you have a couple of drinks, you have fun, you go to nice places, and you do stuff. Well, in principle, yes, this is true. But you need these people to start with. You need to motivate people to get together. You need to collect their ideas. You need to collect their proposals. You need somebody that gets all these things together and tries to get feedback, to move around, to think, okay, is this a good idea? Can we do something about that? And then some support is needed, and this can come from TERENA, or maybe the task forces can be useful to bring ideas into GÉANT, particularly if we wanted to do some research work. GÉANT has got some manpower, has got some infrastructure for that, so why not? So, what is that we share? Well, you get lots of ideas. Maybe some of the ideas you want to keep them for yourself. You can become rich, can win a Nobel Prize, you never know. But there are some ideas that you think, well, okay, maybe I cannot do this on my own. I can be better off if I get some support from other people. I can learn from mistakes that other people can be doing. However, just the idea is not enough. Also, my cat sometimes dreams to kill big birds. That doesn't work, likely. It requires some support. It requires some manpower. Manpower costs. You need sometimes to acquire external resources or contractor. Some small projects can be funded by TERENA, but as you know, TERENA is not Microsoft, it's not Google. So our funding is very limited. There are, of course, different approaches. We can support you in a procurement. And this is not only because you don't have to do the boring work, but it could be more cost-effective if we join forces instead of you doing that on your own. Could also be equally true that maybe some procurement is better off done at the national level for whatever reasons. It could be easier to contract a provider to deliver what we want, and again, the mass can reduce the cost. Could be also nice to share some development, like the URN registry that Vittoriano has developed and he made that available for other people, so we can just use what he has done. In any case, all this requires sharing and participation from everybody. So, why we like sharing? Well, I think it's really something that we do well. We want to share because we want to show other people how good we are, because we want to learn from other people, and also because sometimes most of us are involved really in projects that are really cross boundaries. Of course, there are some features that we are looking at, particularly over the last years, in my opinion, as the developments of middleware consolidates within the countries. You see that people are more and more interested in doing international collaboration, and this brings all other type of issues. So this is really an open call to participate. You can participate in different ways, and you don't have to be particularly active. You don't have to travel if you don't want to. You can be comfortably at home. You can just send us an email. It's all, well, for free for whoever participates. The task forces are open to anybody. We don't charge for membership fee. It's not restricted to TERENA members. On the contrary, there are lots of people that are not members. Industry members are welcome. So it's really entirely up to you. Some people think that we are still very much focused and limited, restricted to the mailing list, and that the mailing lists are so 70s. Maybe we can improve and we can use some more modern tools as we are at that. And this is really all I wanted to say. There are links on the things that we do. Please just share your ideas. Maybe we can do something useful with that. So, class, I'm done.
Thank you, Licia. Any questions for Licia? Then we move on to, I would say, both something a bit more in the future rather than looking back, and someone that doesn't appear on all those slides with all the other things we have been doing in the last 10 years. Are you ready? Yeah? It's so much easier to work with men without big hair and stuff like that. Gijs van den Broek, he is a student at Twente University of Technology. Also, by the way, the first institution that did eduroam. And he does his graduation project at SurfNet in the Netherlands, and he will talk about DNSSEC.
Thank you. Thank you, Klaas. In the next about 15 minutes, I would like to walk you through an issue with DNS, especially when using DNSSEC. And it relates to the fragmentation issues. I would like to present to you the problem in question, and then two possible solutions for that. And I'll close the presentation with some comparisons. So first, the problem that I would like to present to you. This is just a very simple DNS setup. We have a resolver on the left-hand side and an authoritative name server on the right-hand side. Just assume for the moment that the authoritative name server is one from SurfNet for the surfnet.nl zone. And this is some resolver at some ISP. then you see a query in DNS query in one traveling from the resolver to the SurfNet authoritative name server, and the authoritative name server responds with a DNS response in 2. But since we are using in the last few years eDNS, which results in larger DNS messages, it's possible that this DNS response could get fragmented. And that could happen in 3, where the first fragments could go on to the resolver and arrive at the resolver in 4, but any remaining fragments could get blocked at the firewall as is shown in 5. From the perspective of the resolver here, it only receives the first fragment, and it doesn't get the complete DNS response message. And after about 30 seconds, it will return an ICMP fragment reassembly time exceeded message back to the authoritative name server side at SurfNet. In this case, the firewall is apparently set up to block those UDP fragments. And this could have the effect that the zone available on that authoritative name server becomes invisible. Now, this wasn't an issue when we didn't use eDNS or DNSSEC, because DNS messages were simply packed in 512 bytes. But with eDNS, they get larger. To give you a view of how extensive this issue actually is, I've looked at some traffic at one of the authoritative name servers at SurfNet. And what we see here is that more than a quarter of all the UDP DNS messages or UDP DNS responses actually being sent by the authoritative name server are being fragmented. And over time, if you look at the network traffic over time, you see that more than half of all the resolvers that are actually querying this particular authoritative name server receive at some point a fragmented UDP response. So it is actually occurring. Fragmentation is there in DNS. In the first picture I've shown you, I've mentioned the ICMP message returning to the authoritative name server of SurfNet. So what we can actually see is, from our side, is how many resolvers are actually experiencing this particular problem. And at the top of this table, you can see that particular behavior. I've mentioned it case 1, where we receive those actual ICMP messages at the authoritative name server. And we see those arriving for about 1.1% of all resolvers querying that particular name server. But it could very well be that that firewall that I mentioned could also block that particular ICMP message, so we don't see it. And in that case, we see DNS software at the resolver side attempting different tactics to still get an answer. For instance, it could completely drop the eDNS header, as is mentioned in the second line. This would result that it would fall back to plain DNS. Or in the fourth case, where it reduces the so-called advertised maximum response size that it is willing to receive from the authoritative name server. This is actually something that bind does. So as you can see, those percentages that for hosted we see this aren't small, but on the other hand, they are not mutually exclusive. So you just can't add them up. To give an indication, other research has shown that about 9% of all hosts are experiencing problems with fragmented UDP messages to some extent. We don't expect to see that number in practice because we are looking at it from our authoritative name server side, and we are primarily communicating with ISP resolvers. So to solve this problem, I have two solutions. The first one is very simple. At the top of this slide, you can see the 3 authoritative name servers of SurfNet. What I plan to do is to alter the configuration of only the 3rd name server just a bit. Actually, it's just one line in the configuration. It forces the authoritative name server to respond in such a way to any query it receives, in such a way that all the responses are never larger than 1232 bytes. And as you may know, this would stop to a large extent any fragmentation from occurring. The other two authoritative name servers remain unchanged. So this is actually a very simple setup. But you should know that we are actually affecting every resolver here. So every resolver that is querying something at NS3 will never get a response larger than this amount back. So we may want to have a more surgical approach. And that's actually in the second solution, which is a bit more complex. I'll walk you through it. What we do here is we have, again, the third authoritative name server with bind running on it. But we are also going to install a separate application that we develop ourselves called DNS-RM, which will, for one thing, is it will function as a host proxy. It will sit between bind that is running on that name server and the outside world, and it will forward every in and outgoing DNS messages. It will also forward a copy of that live DNS traffic feed to an outside sensor. And this sensor is capable of detecting the resolvers that are experiencing actually those problems. And in a few slides back, I mentioned those 5 cases. If I see for a particular resolver that it is experiencing one of those cases, it will be marked as a so-called problem resolver. So the sensor, it receives a live traffic feed, it detects the problem resolvers, and it, again, as a result, it returns a list of problem resolvers back to the application running on the third authoritative name server. The DNS-RM application then will finally alter only those particular queries that then arrive from those particular problem resolvers. All other resolvers remain unaffected. So this is a much more surgical approach than the first solution. What we also plan to do is to feed this sensor with live traffic feeds from the other 2 authoritative name servers to get a more complete, a more quicker picture of which resolvers are actually experiencing this particular issue. So just a brief comparison between the 2 solutions. The first one, again, very simple, but it affects every resolver. And actually, if a resolver is behind a firewall that is improperly configured to block those UDP fragments, we are, again, with this solution, providing this particular resolver with an answer. So you could say we are rewarding bad behavior. On the other hand, if a resolver is perfectly capable of receiving fragmented DNS messages, then we are, in this case, punishing it to some extent by giving it only a response which is smaller than it could handle. I'm putting punishes between quotes because it is, of course, the resolver still gets an answer, and there's still plenty of additional records there. So punishing is maybe a little bit heavy. Solution 2, a lot more complex and also more vulnerable because we are inserting a lot more software that needs to keep running perfectly. But it is more surgical and affects only those particular problem resolvers that we want to affect. And I mentioned the rewarding of bad behavior for the first solution. In order to avoid doing that in solution 2, we will use a mechanism where we will, if once we detect a resolver as a problem resolver, we will not do that permanently. We will drop that particular resolver from the list, for instance, every 2 hours. Which will make it actually feel the pain again. For a brief moment, it has to be detected again. It could be a very short period, but again, it will briefly feel the pain. Some final remarks. What I'd like to hope you would take away from this is fragmentation issues in DNS are there, and they may be quite serious. And it's not even limited to DNSSEC. We are using, of course, eDNS. When we use DNSSEC, but it is already occurring in eDNS. At any time we are using larger than the plain DNS messages, this issue can occur. What we expect is at least 1% of all resolvers will be marked at some point as a problem resolver, because for those hosts we already see the ICP messages. but it's likely to be a bit more than this. And you should know that this mechanism, or these mechanisms actually, don't solve any issues with firewalls that simply block anything containing an EDNS header or UDP packets larger than 512 bytes. So that's actually it.
Thank you, Gijs. Are there questions for Gijs? Actually, I was so successful in harassing the speakers to stay on time that we actually have a bit of time. So feel free to raise your arm. Diego? Oh, you want to come back and talk some more? No, going once. Thank you, Gijs. Then we're on to our next speaker that said that he had prepared only for 5 minutes because we would run late anyway and he would have no time left. Well, Roland Hedberg, one of the co-chairs of TF-EMC2, together with Victoriano Girald sitting at the first row. And Roland will try to introduce some new things that we might consider working on. And well, without taking anything more from your half hour, Roland.
Yeah, exactly. That would be nice. So, actually, it's quite fun that I'm standing here because, as you can see, I'm probably the older man here, sort of, and I'm going to talk about the future. Sort of, it shouldn't be sort of. It's very strange. Older man. I've been around for quite a number of years. Actually started off working with RARE, Working Group 3, so 88 or something like that. And I remember, Lisa was talking about sort of moving around to different nice places and eating dinner and so forth. I remember we actually, this working group event, we used to meet at each other's places, sort of. So we were in London, for instance, meeting where the guys at UCL was and so forth. Anyway, finally they decided from the commission that we could meet anywhere in Brussels. So we started to meet there, but we found very nice restaurants in Brussels, and one of the things I brought from there was sort of the chocolate stuff, which was very interesting. Anyway, so this is sort of talking about the future. This is also very personal. I mean, anyone here who is going to stand up here and talk about future, what's going to be there, is of course colored by your experience. It's always like one of the things you will get from this presentation is nice pictures. I hope that's what you remember. Maybe something else, but at least some nice pictures. There are lots of things that will sort of come in the future. There are lots of things coming in all the time. So I was just bring up a couple of them from my particular perspective. And when I talk about that, as been mentioned already, I'm one of the chairs for TF-EMC2. And Klaus said that nowadays sort of 2 chairs that we have for TF-EMC2 are both from the university. But I usually put it like this. I'm employed by the university, and in this case, Umeå University in Sweden, but I don't work there. Because 100% of my time is actually on national and international projects. I have hardly anything to do with Umeå University, which is both good and bad. I really sort of miss the connection to sort of the daily stuff. I used to run the network at Umeå University, but I don't do that anymore. I also have been lately heavily involved in doing development of software and not sort of development of services per se. but more on software. So I'll start with bring your own. Some of you may recognize the people on this picture. This was taken in Prague last year. And of course, everyone brings their own. This is something which is very interesting. If you've been around for a couple of years, you've seen sort of more and more people coming with their portables and opening them, and especially since eduroam started to be usable, sort of. And I say usable because at Umeå University we decided very early that we should use certificates and not username and password, and that has been hitting us for a number of years. People not sort of cranking up the timers, and it was the communication was timed out, and we never got the connection. But anyway, here you see sort of laptops. But if I would to take the same picture today, half of them would use slates, iPads or any other types of slates. So that's a big change. And actually, that's sort of one of the things that I hope will happen, at least. The last couple of years you've seen sort of coming with the economic problems that people are trying to standardize. They are trying to sort of make the processes very this is sort of all the processes should be sort of what's important is that it's cheap. Everything should be cheap, and that means that you have standardized PCs, for instance, which is no one wants, but except for the people that is going to manage them, not the users. So I'd like to see a more user-centric approach in the future. I hope that will happen. But that's twofold. One is, of course, that what happens is that you bring your things to your university, or as in this case, to the conference, and you open them up, and then you expect them to just work. You expect to have a network, but you also, if you're home at the university, you expect to have sort of access to printers and mail and all that kind of things. So you really would like a new person coming into the organization to bring her or his sort of machine, and then everything should just be magically configured. And one of the things that has been talked about is I think at another session here, yesterday I think it was, the CAT tool for eduroam. So you configure your eduroam stuff sort of by loading down some software from a web browser. There is work going on now to do other stuff to get sort of certificates, and also you could imagine things like setting up your mail account, fixing your printers and everything like that just automatically. And that's one of the things that I see in the future. And this is also typical of sort of the middleware stuff. It shouldn't be noticeable. It's just something that happens somewhere in the background. Sort of, you download something and then magic happens and everything works. Come on. Oh, sorry. Another one is the increase in scale. Those who know me know that I'm quite fond of baseball, which is sort of strange, being a non-American, non-US citizen. Sorry? In general, strange. That's me. Oh, yeah, okay. Okay. But typical, this goes for any team sport, is that you have a lot of individuals, and they have actually sort of two goals. One is, of course, that they should promote themselves to sort of get higher salary, to be playing in better teams and so forth. And the other is actually to make the team work. And we have exactly that problem sort of when we are building federations, which has been mentioned a couple of times now, that the federation, that is the team, can actually not do a lot. It is the players, the IDPs, the SPs, who does the things, those who are deciding whether sort of what kind of attributes you are going to release, for instance, from the IDP to an SP. The federation can't do anything. So that's one of the sort of problems, and that's a political problem. That's not something that sort of we can solve. but we will try to provide sort of the runners of IDPs, for instance, with tools such that they make life easier for them, but at the same time sort of make the team better. Another thing that will increase in scale, at least in my agenda, is the Internet of Services. My imagination is, anyway, that sort of you have this cloud stuff which will happen, and there will be more services that you can buy out there for usage at the organization. But the big problem here, for me anyway, is how do you compare two services? For those who were here this morning and listened to Jan Martin, you heard him start by saying he was doing research in chemistry and had these 8 programs who did sort of models from molecules. And he couldn't sort of use just one because they did everything differently. So he had to use all 8 of them. And then later he talked about sort of cutting down on all these services and actually sort of don't have too many of them because you want to be able to combine them. And if they all do things differently, it's very hard sort of to build something on top of them. So I see before me, and that is one of the things that we are working on within one of the Jean 3 projects, the GEMBAS project, a registry where you can register your services, such that not just describing the service as such in a technical term, which means that if you're using SOAP, it's a WSDL description. If you're using REST interface, it might be a WADL description. But also describing who is running this service, what type of SLA can I imagine having sort of when I want to use this service. Does it cost? Is it a service that is mature, or is it something that's in a sort of research phase or just started? And all that kind of things. And I think we need something like that if we are going to sort of be able to get services from outside our our own organization. Also going back to what Jan Martin said this morning. Evolution is also something that's happening. And I, who has been around them for a while, I remember sort of when, actually I started with X500. I may be the only one here who sort of used that for oh yeah, there are some more who remember that. Good old times. So, but I also remember sort of when we left that and started with Dixie, who then became LDAP eventually. And we had this problem that everyone was starting to use LDAP and have LDAP directories, but how did you find information about people in another LDAP directory? How did you find sort of the LDAP directory that you were actually wanting to query for information? And there were different attempts. There was the directory of directories, and there was sort of the index server approach to directories. And then eventually sort of that question just disappeared because the identity federations appeared, and they were going to take care of all the information. But what we did in that switch was that we switched from a pull mode, that is, you wanted to get information, to push mode, that is, someone is pushing information to you. And I'm not sure that is always the best thing to do. But anyway, so what you can see now in most organizations, at least within higher education, is that identity management, it's working. You've done that. You know how to do that. And now we're starting to work with groups and roles. And there are some people are starting to understand that, and they're starting to use, they have used for a while, groups and roles for authorization. And I am of the, I'm totally convinced that that is not the solution. I'm totally convinced that what we really want is attribute-based authorization. That's the only way to do this. I've seen a lot of organizations that started off with sort of doing authorization based on groups, and it works for a while. You can do like sort of the first 75–80% of your cases, but then it just breaks down because the number of groups just goes through the roof. What's also been talked about in this at this conference is that you have e-science, and e-science wants to use the federation for doing authentication, but the IDPs out there don't have the information that e-science needs to do the authorization, so they want to use attribute authorities to get that information, and they want to run the attribute authorities and provide the attributes and the information to use by the services for authorization. Again, I'm not sure that that is the right way to do this. I would rather, and that's something that I'm going to pursue in the future, have a authorization engine, a server, who does the authorization somewhere, and then pushes a quality entitlement or something like that to the service. Because from my understanding, sort of, in most cases, there is an organization who buys a service from somewhere. Now, why should the service decide who can use this service or not? Shouldn't it be the organization who decides that? Shouldn't the organization sort of, so shouldn't the organization easily sort of use some kind of attribute values then to tell that to the service, rather than service doing the authorization? Since we're using a push mode, sort of very limited amount of information. How am I on time? 20 minutes left. Oh, we can finish early. Oh, sorry. As I said, actually, as Klaus said, I planned actually for doing this in 4 or 5 minutes, because I know that the people in front of me was great talkers. So, but he's very strict, big whip. And you know what they do in China, sort of. So they, so we're afraid of him. I took that picture two mornings ago down here. So the Great Divide. This is the federation problem. You have two major single sign-on systems. You have SAML2, and on one side, and on the other side, you are going to have UAuth to OpenID Connect. And they will be there in parallel, side by side. And I'm not sure that who is going to win out, if anyone is going to win out. This may be sort of I mean, compared to this, IPv4, IPv6 transition is piece of cake. But what you have to plan for at home is that this is going to happen. You will have both of these in-house. And you will be connected to federations that do both of these things. Presently, we see sort of SAML being in higher ed and also sort of government agencies in countries. And UAuth to OpenID Connect, which isn't there yet, but soon is going to be there. But say OpenID then, it's on the commercial side, the big vendors like Google, Facebook, and so forth. So, and that's going to remain. And sort of going back to bring your own, as someone said here before, standing up here, yesterday or was the day before, now you have people coming to schools, to the universities, having identities already. And how are you going to cope with that? one of the things that has been done at my university is that they try to lure people, I mean, students at a sort of high school into the universities by sort of providing them with interesting website, sort of discussion groups and that kind of thing. But you don't sort of create any identities for them there, only sort of temporary stuff, usually based on social identities. And then you want to bring, then sort of eventually they become students at the university, and you want to sort of merge these things. You want to bring the history that they had before they came to the university and merge that with the history they have at the university. So you have to deal with multiple identities for one person. And you have to sort of manage that. We also have some people who have the idea that you may want to have different persona. So in some cases you want to be this person, in some cases you want to be this person, and they should never meet. So you may have people at the university who have 2 or 3 or 4 email addresses, and they should sort of all go to exhaust the same person, but it should be really treated as different persons. Also an interesting topic for the future. I think that that's going to happen too. And now the last quarter of it, our class will take over. No. So, time to wake up.
Thank you, Roland. Well, as you are all aware, we have time for some questions or discussion, Niels. Come on, anybody. Niels, yay. Can you wait for the microphone?
Bring your own.
Agreed. In my case, that would be very well. Never mind. EMC square is called EMC square because the M stands for middleware, and not only for federated authentication. And there's loads and loads and loads of useful middleware for academia out there. Are we going to do anything with that? I mean, I understand why we do federated authentication, and this has been very successful, of course, but, well.
So I can, as I started off with saying, this was my personal view, sort of, and it is, I'm in that environment, so identity management and so forth. But so my only answer to you could be that, or will be, that the TF-EMC2 is now the next month or so going to start, well, actually it's sort of tomorrow, going to start to discuss what we are going to do after this term is up, which is like the beginning of autumn, I think. September, right. So give me your input. Maybe I should also add a couple of things. One is that what we have already decided between Victoriano and me is that he's going to be the politician. And I'm going to be the technical guy.
Okay.
So
perhaps I should rephrase and not so much direct a question to you, but request direct a question to the audience. What should we do?
Yes.
That's actually my question, I think.
Absolutely. I'd love to hear answer to that.
Yeah.
Industry. No.
Commercial.
Can you bring?
Yeah.
First, I'm not the industry. I'm an operator. The industry is him. No, it's something that really have concerned me in the past. Is precisely about this in both sides. I mean, in the mobility side and the MC square side, we have somehow suffered of the fact that we have been successful with one thing. In one case, eduroam. In the other case, the identity federations, and we tend to be And it's very difficult because you go on getting requests around that. And we had very few. And I acknowledge what it means. Cannot see
Behind you, straight behind you.
Oh, just to look at him into the eyes. No, I know it's difficult, but I agree. I tend to agree with Roland that what we need are direct proposals. Something about, well, let's forget about this whole thing and let's do whatever. Or, well, let it run rotten in a corner and go for the NSEC or whatever. So that's the...
I actually want to add a bit to what Jago is saying. That is actually something that both Jago and I have struggled with. The problem is you organize physical meetings, and what you get there is, if you're not very careful, the same people that were there the previous time, because you're working on the things that they care about. As long as you stay kind of in the same type of technology, that's okay, because then you have these adjacencies that are easy to get into, and that you get people to work with you. In the case of TF Mobility, or TF Mobility and Network Middleware as it's called right now, that has been for, I would say, 80% of its lifetime a TF eduroam. Because that is how we gathered, that is how we started working, and we kept developing that. What we then try to do is do other things. DNSSEC that was presented just now is an example of that. The problem is, how are you going to get a sizable amount of people that are interested in DNSSEC in that room if they know that 80% of the people will not even care about DNSSEC and will actually use that time to write their emails about what should be done with eduroam? So one of the things we are trying right now, and that we hope will be a success, we want to go to a bit fewer physical meetings and add to that a couple of virtual meetings and dedicate those to a specific topic. So where I would hope that we still get this core of people that I think it was Jago that was referring to that have become friends and that is still growing, and some people are doing other things, other people's join, but it's just a lot of fun to work with all these guys, and we can use many more to have drinks with, to have dinner with, and do cool things. But at the same time, we also should accept that there are subsets of people that perhaps are not interested in all that stuff, but are interested in this one particular topic. And the nice thing about virtual meetings, and we try to schedule them alternating in the morning and in the late afternoon, so that we can also get people from other parts of the world that probably would always have trouble getting funding to travel all the way over here. So we want to get also the Americans, the Canadians, the Australians, the Japanese, the New Zealanders. I'm looking at one, so I have to be careful not to leave anyone out. And we hope that will help. But this all, just as I was saying in my introduction, the task forces are open for anyone that wants to participate. The counter side of it is that we are doing the things that you guys want to do. So if there are things that you care about that fall roughly in the middleware category, as Jago pointed out, we are not that religious about that. There should be at least some middleware component about it. But if there is something that you care deeply about and that you either think this would get much better if we would do it together, or this would get much better if only I got experts to look at it and suggest improvements, Or perhaps this is a crazy idea, but I'm going to say it anyway because somebody else may then say, no, this is not a good idea, but we should do it like that. All those kind of things, if you have those things, come to the task forces. We don't bite. If you buy us a beer, we are even going to be really nice to you. So please join us in these task forces. If you have ideas, come to us.
So just want to add to that. I mean, I support Klaus in that. Just wanted to add that if you have an idea, it doesn't have to be an idea with like the eduroam that sort of it will take 10 years to finish off or something like that. It can be a very small thing. Yeah, right. So I mean, when we talked about this, Victoriano and I, yesterday, we said that any project that we take on now for the next 2 years should be such in scope that it actually can be finished within 2 years, at least to the extent that we know whether it's feasible to do anything of it or not.
So we have Valentino Cavalli, CTO of TERENA, that wants to say something.
Yeah, just a remark on, actually 2 remarks. One is I liked very much somehow the discussion, in my view, highlighted the trade-off between continuity and innovation in task forces. And we have officially a mechanism to kill a task force after 2 years. But TF-EMC2, for example, I think has been living for approximately 10 years, and we think that we would like to continue in that respect. So I would like everybody to reflect on this. There is a sort of continuum that we want to ensure, and we want the task force to serve that purpose of building a community, as Licha mentioned, but also keeping that community together, but also at the same time be receptive and open to completely new things. And then I think, Niels, you made a very good point. There is much more to middleware than identity federation. So I think we need to figure out what is the best way of addressing both elements. And I think, as Klaas said, or no, it was you, sorry, you are now starting a process of redefining what will be the work program of TF-EMC2 and of TF-MNM for the next 2 years, for instance. So that's a good opportunity. That was the first point. Before giving the floor to you, I wanted to make a second remark, which is related to what both Klaas, a comment from Klaas, the fact that task force is now meeting face-to-face less frequently, but also trying to have more virtual meetings. And Licha, when she mentioned that, the mailing lists are, the communication mean of the 70s. I think another element for reflection I'd like to throw here in the room is, could we take advantage of social networking and social media to have technical discussion, yeah? Because yesterday afternoon there was a BOF, which I found very interesting, and it was really trying to explore how social media could be useful not only for marketing, say, whatever, not only for marketing, but also to support technical discussion. We know that there is a generation of students and even higher than say university students or so that do not use email or just use the email account to be able to access their social networking systems. And therefore, I think it would be good also for task forces to consider extending this. I spoke a lot, sorry.
No, that was perfect, because I have to say, I now have to stop because we're running out of time. Who wants to comment on what Valentino said? I personally agree with pretty much all he said, so I'm probably not the one to respond. But if anyone else feels like doing it, I also then you want to say something? Okay.
Just a short comment. Within the Swedish Federation, Swamid, we started to use, we actually created a Facebook account and started to send messages to that. So I think that kind of social media is very good for dissemination, getting people to know what's happening. I'm not sure if it's good for technical discussions. That you have to use something else for. But for dissemination, it's really good.
And Roland, you are on that Facebook page at the moment. A photo of you uploaded. Roland talks on the TNC. Blah blah blah.
Did he give permission for that? Okay. So, with that, I do want to thank you all for coming here. I do want to emphasize that this is an ongoing process. We are always looking for ways to improve. If you have ideas, come to us, talk to us, come up with proposals. And with that, I thank you all for coming.